And I know a lot of you have been in Rotary a while, so hopefully some of this is not new, but hopefully you may think about our Rotary Foundation slightly differently or some different things about it after my presentation tonight. But first of all, I'd like you to think about our world if we didn't have our Rotary Foundation. So if we didn't have our Rotary Foundation, the hungry wouldn't be fed. Children would still have polio. People would still be drinking diseased and polluted water. Illiterate children and women would have little hope for their future. The homeless would not have shelter, and world peace would only be a dream. So Rotary members contribute their skills, expertise and resources to help solve some of the world's toughest problems. From providing clean water to promoting peace worldwide, our Rotary Foundation, through its grants, bring our service projects to life. Now, the work of Rotary begins in the community, and we know that every community has its own unique needs and concerns. And whilst we serve our communities in different ways, we've focused our efforts in 6 key areas, our areas of focus, and this is to maximise our local and global impact. And these areas encompass some of the world's most critical and widespread humanitarian needs, and we actually have a proven record of success in addressing them as Rotarians. And for those who have been in Rotary for a while, you may notice that there's some slight changes to our areas of focus this year. The areas are still the same, but they have changed the wording slightly. So we're not changing what we do, we're just changing how we look at what we do. So true peace is not merely the absence of war, but it is the presence of justice. And conflict and violence displaced more than 68 million people in the past year, half of those being children. And we as Rotarians refuse to accept conflict as a way of life. So in just over a decade, the 6 Rotary Peace Centres have trained more than 1,200 Peace Fellows. Many of them now serve as leaders at international organisations or have started their own foundations. And 67 million children worldwide have no access to education, and 1.7 million additional teachers are needed worldwide to meet the global goal of universal primary education. So the Foundation has a goal to strengthen that capacity of communities to support education. And 1 billion people suffer from neglected tropical diseases such as dengue fever and leprosy every year. And more than 100 million people are pushed into poverty each year because of medical costs. So our foundation grants support our health education programs that explain how diseases are spread, and they promote ways to reduce the risk of transmission. So we're not just giving them vaccinations and the medications, but we're actually teaching people how to stop diseases being transferred. And more than 2.5 billion people lack access to adequate sanitation, and at least 3,000 people die every day from diseases caused by unsafe water. And our Rotary Foundation gives communities the ability to develop and maintain sustainable water and sanitation systems, and they support studies related to water and sanitation. And nearly 1.4 billion people live on less than $1.25 per day. So Rotary Foundation funded projects enhance economic and community development and develop opportunities for decent and productive work in our communities for both young and old. And our foundation grants provide immunisations and antibiotics to babies. They improve access to essential medical services and support trained healthcare providers for mothers and their children. And whilst we have our 6 areas of focus, we still also need to focus on ending polio, because it does remain endemic in 3 countries, Afghanistan, Nigeria and Pakistan. And until it's interrupted in these countries, all countries remain at risk of polio, especially those that are vulnerable with weak public health and immunisation services and travel or trade links to endemic countries. But why do we really need to end polio, apart from the fact that we made a promise 30-odd years ago to the world? But if we eradicate polio, we will improve lives. 16 million people are walking today who would have otherwise been paralysed if we'd not started this campaign. If we don't eradicate polio, within 10 years, as many as 200,000 children could be paralysed every year. And a polio-free world will save the global economy $40 to $50 billion in health costs over the next 20 years. So we really need to continue the fight and finish the goal. So we know that polio, we started in 1985, and it was an Australian world president, Sir Clem Renouf, who decided to eradicate polio from the Philippines. And then Rotary took it up in 1988, and we've seen massive strides in really ridding the world of polio. However, you might notice that this year to date, we've seen a rise. So we've got 19 cases in Afghanistan and 77 in Pakistan. And yes, it's concerning, but in some ways it's not. One of the reasons we've seen the increase in polio numbers is we're actually getting better penetration into areas in Pakistan. We've got more people going into Pakistan, we've got better surveillance. So we're actually finding the people with polio that we weren't finding before. So whilst it's discouraging to think that we've got more cases of polio, in some ways it's a positive because we really know the numbers that we have to fight. And eradicating a disease is a big job, and we need every Rotarian's help. We have made incredible progress over the last 3 decades, and we're at a really exciting time for polio eradication, a time when each new polio case could very well be the last. And of course, it's so exciting because Africa is set to be declared polio-free in March 2020, as it's had no cases for 3 years. So we're just waiting on the sign-off from the World Health Organization. So it means that really we're down to just 2 countries, and they're probably the 2 most difficult that we're ever going to face. And we still do have some work to do. Yes, we've got these 3 endemic countries, and they've never stopped the transmission of the wild polio virus, so they are our big focus. But there's 6 outbreak countries, and these countries are those that have stopped the wild virus, but they are experiencing reinfection either through the importation of the wild virus or through vaccine-derived viruses. And the scary thing for Australia is our close neighbours, Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, and most recently the Philippines, are 3 of those outbreak countries. So polio really is just a plane ride away. And the at-risk countries, that's where low levels of immunity and surveillance leave them at risk of polio returning. So we need to ensure that every country stays free from polio. And it's essential to reach every child with polio to strengthen our disease surveillance. And even though India was declared polio-free in 2012, they're continuing the fight in India, and there's actually another immunisation day happening in January next year as Rotarians realise the need to continue to ensure that polio doesn't return to India. So we have this work to do, polio eradication, and our 6 areas of focus that we concentrate on. So how do we do it? Well, obviously our Rotary District grants support the overall mission of the Rotary Foundation, which is to support the efforts of achievements of world understanding and peace through local, national and international humanitarian, educational and cultural projects. And Rotary's made it really simple. There's just 2 types of grants, our district grants and our global grants. So this means that our contributions to our foundation go to our clubs and districts to help them get greater impact, greater flexibility and greater sustainability. Now, you're probably all aware of our district grants. They're the small-scale, short-term activities, generally 3 to 6 months, that involve active participation from Rotary clubs and address needs in either your local or international communities. And you can use a district grant to fund a variety of projects and activities, and there's very little restrictions on them, as long as they align with one of the Foundation's missions. And we're really proud that this year our district supported 16 clubs with district grants to a value of $39,300. So that's money that's going to help either local or international projects for our clubs. So if you're thinking bigger and have a large project, global grants are the ones for you. They support large international activities that are sustainable with measurable outcomes in the areas of focus. And the key area is that they have a match or a partnership between a club or a district where the activity will occur and a club or a district in another country. For those of us who've been in it a while, we used to call them matching grants because they'd be matched. So Foundation Global Grants fund projects and activities that are sustainable and measurable and relate to our areas of focus. They can be humanitarian projects, they can be for vocational training teams, or they can be for scholarships. Global grants, we're talking big, minimum of $30,000 US for a global grant, but up to a maximum of $400,000. So if you've got a big project, the global grants are really the way to go. There is a couple of stipulations. At least 30% of the funding must come from the international club, and you can only do projects where there's Rotary in that country. So it's a Rotary to Rotary. And, we've got Rotary in 190 odd countries or whatever. So there's pretty much a chance wherever you want to do a global grant, there's a Rotary presence. And what I love about global grants is they're a really great way that you can triple your impact. So you can put in some money, and if you do it smart and you use some global funds and you use some district global funds, you can turn your money and triple it. So you can actually make your money go a lot further, and it's something that we're encouraging clubs to look at. So instead of funding a project yourselves, why not get the foundation or other clubs to help fund it? So where does the money come from that we pay for, that we get our grants? Well, it's really simple. It comes from contributions to our foundation from clubs and Rotarians. So when you give to our annual fund, so not to Polio Plus or to anything else, in 3 years we get 50% of that money back. So if your club gave $1,000, in 3 years we'd get $500, which we could use for district grants and district global assistance grants, and $500 would go to the World Fund, which is used to match those grants if you're doing a global grant. So last year, the Foundation awarded $86,677,000 to 1,306 global grants. So you can see that there's a lot of money being used by our foundation, doing a lot of good in the world. And so donating to our foundation means that there'll be clean water and sanitation. It means there'll be health and hope in areas where there was once diseases like polio. It means that there's economic development and new opportunities. So with your help, we can make lives better in our communities and around the world using our foundation. So apart from the opportunity to get some money back, why would we support our foundation? If you're like me, you get lots of people all the time talk about, please give us some money, we need your help. So apart from the facts that you've seen, I'd like you to think that you and I and most of the people we know are part of only 25% of people who have food in the world, who have a refrigerator, who have clothes on our back, a roof over our head and a safe place to sleep. But what I love about our Rotary Foundation is it's so mission-driven. We're constantly working to ensure that we have successful, sustainable programs with measurable outcomes. We are extremely transparent. We have great accountability. We're rated in the top charity navigator in the US for the last 11 years, which means that we meet all the requirements for being a transparent foundation at the highest level. And our foundation's effective. There's 1.2 million people working together to transform the world. We have a greater reach than the United Nations. We have Rotarians with impressive networks and expertise that when they add that to grassroots knowledge working with local people, our foundation gives impactful and effective projects. And the other thing that I love about our Rotary Foundation, especially for our district, is we get back a lot more than we give. So we give to our Rotary Foundation, as does every district around the world. But in the past 4 years, we've received back over $120,000 more than what we've given. So this thinking that, more money goes out than we get back is not true. We're very fortunate of the support that we get from our foundation. And I really love that it is, and I always call it our foundation, because it truly is our foundation. The money comes from Rotarians, it comes from Rotary clubs. How we use the money comes from Rotarians. Rotary clubs come up with the programs that they implement. The overseeing of the foundation is by Rotarians. So our foundation has Rotarians involved from the start to the finish. So I work for a charity and I ask people to give money all the time, and I get asked to give money all the time. And so probably giving to me is something that I consider quite a lot. And for those who know me well know I'm a coffee addict, self-confessed coffee addict. So I sat down and thought about if I gave up a cup of coffee per week, through the Rotary Foundation, that would provide books, pencils and paper for a class of 25 in India. And then if I gave up a cup of coffee per day, which is not going to happen, but in the real, in that perfect world, through the foundation, that could provide a clinic for safe childbirth and infant health for a village in Papua New Guinea. So using the strength and the expertise and the resources of our Rotary Foundation, a little bit can go a really long way, and that's why I love it. So you'd like to give to our foundation? Well, there's a couple of ways. Of course, we ask all clubs in the district to give, and I congratulate you as a club on giving to our Rotary Foundation. But you may like to give personally as well. When you're considering giving to other charities, whether it's the Cancer Council, RSPCA, Wheels for Hope, great charity. If you don't know about it, I can tell you all about it. You also might like to give to our Rotary Foundation. So you could become a centurion. A centurion means that you will give 100 Australian dollars per year. So that works out to less than $2 a week or 30 cents a day. We have what we call the Paul Harris Society, or I like to call it the Secret Society because no one knows what it is. The Paul Harris Society is not because you've got a Paul Harris Fellow. The Paul Harris Society was created for those people who would like to give $1,000 per year to the Rotary Foundation. And that's only as long as you're able to. And what I like about that is you can give that monthly, fortnightly, quarterly, annually, however you like. I actually have a direct debit come out of my bank account, so I never know it's missing. And then at the end of the year, I've given the money. And my favourite one is you might like to become a benefactor or leave a bequest, because that's not going to cost you a cent today. And you won't even know that it's gone because you won't be around to miss it. So do think about becoming a benefactor. To become a centurion, I know people who put away $2 a week and at the end of the year they have their $100. Some clubs actually add it to their membership fees, which I think is quite incredible. And other clubs actually do a fundraiser. So we have a few clubs that are 100% centurion, and it's a really simple way to make a contribution. And just so you know, $100 would provide a year's tuition for a high school student in Africa, or a flock of chickens for eggs and offspring in Timor-Leste. Or that $100 could purchase 140 polio vaccines, which will protect 140 children from the threat of polio. And remember, the great thing about our foundation is 92% of the funds are spent on program, awards and operations. So the money is not going to fund large buildings, it's not going to fund salaries, it's actually going to where it needs to go. So the impact of your donation is significant. So I encourage you to think about that. Now, it is Foundation Month, which is why Kerry asked me to speak to you. And there are a few other things that clubs are doing around the district. You may have seen come out recently that we're talking about 5 cents for foundation. That's because we don't know any other use for a 5 cent piece. It doesn't go in parking meters, vending machines or anything else. So we're asking people to collect their 5 cent pieces. We have some foundation money boxes that you can put on your desk at work. I have one on the kitchen table. You might like to have a meal and donate the cost of the meal to the foundation, or run a fundraising event for our foundation. But whatever you do, any money that you give, will make an impact and get to where the areas of focus that we need it. So I'd like to leave you with a little video just for a moment. So if you have food in your fridge, clothes on your body, a roof over your head and a place to sleep, you're richer than 75% of the entire world. If you have money in your wallet and can go anywhere you want, you're among 18% of the world's most wealthy people. If you're alive today and healthy, you are more blessed than the millions of people who will not survive this week. And if you can actually read and understand this message, you are more fortunate than the 3 billion people in the world who are blind, deaf, or illiterate. For those people not fortunate like we are, we have the Rotary Foundation. So we all should be proud of the achievements of our foundation. It's trustworthy, it offers us international reach, projects with focused scope, excellent administration, transparency, and above all, credibility. So I thank all of you for your support for our Rotary Foundation, and I encourage you to continue to share the word about our foundation and to continue to support it. And of course, if you'd like any more information about grants or you'd like to think about applying for a grant, the committee is more than happy to help you. We have a plethora of past district governors who are just waiting to help fill in forms. But apart from that, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.